Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. Well, how do you fix the Zoom voice? Why did it start doing that to me? Technology sucks.
Zoom, we're asking you, all right?
Yes.
Zoom people, it might have been something you've added new, but yeah, roll it back. It's not great. I got caught out with it the other day as well. So,
Scott, tell me a little bit about yourself before I go off on Zoom.
Yeah, Scott Weatherly. You contacted me through Stories Out of Time and Space podcast. I do a couple of podcasts and Stories Out of Time and Space. Me and Julian Darius, Dr. Julian Darius, CEO of Sequart. We talk about sci-fi movies on a bi-weekly basis. And I also do 20th Century Geek, which is just me talking about whatever the hell I want, usually and predominantly about sort of geek and nerd culture from the 20th century.
Okay. Which do you feel like talking about? Do you want to talk about sci-fi first, or do you want to talk about geek?
Let's do
first?
Sci-Fi. Yeah, that's where you contact me through. Sci-fi is sort of
Right.
it goes through both of them. So let's kick off with that.
What sci-fi stuff are we talking about here? Is the fact that we're all going to end up being part machine?
Well, weirdly, I tell you what, I've recently written an essay on this. I've been sort of editing and collecting essays and contributing to a book about Judge Dredd, the character, sort of British comic. I don't know if you know who that is, but British comic book character called Judge Dredd. Right?
They made a movie.
Yeah, Dredd, the Carl Urban movie from 2012, and
taking that drug and it's all slow mo and shit.
That's it. Yeah. That's the one. But we're writing this about the comic and about some of the film. But I wrote about they introduced robot judges, and I started to think about this about what's this morality line that we've got, that every time we introduce technology, everyone's like, oh, it's a bit risky. This is, at what point does automation stop? And I looked into it, I was researching it for the essay, and I found there's a survey done in 2016, and it said about, this many jobs can actually be replaced by automation, like now, and by 2022 it'll be this many. It's like, it's basically sort of like 40% of the work population could easily be automated, by 2022. But then it said, well, actually, but 70% of the population done for this survey, interviewed for this survey, agreed that, yes, they would actually take on some either brain or physical body robotic augmentation in order to keep employment or to actually improve their employment chances in the future. So you joke about it, but, we're not too far away from it, in all honesty.
I've talked to a biomechanical engineer who's actually a good friend of mine now, and she talked about giving a person that didn't have legs robotic legs, and it was this amazing thing. But I was like, you got to look at the what that's gonna let in the door. And she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, people blow themselves up in cars for the insurance. You don't think that someone's gonna get pushed to the edge? Maybe they have bad feet and they figure out they can break their legs off to get new ones. You don't think that's a possibility? I bet you 2 weeks into the Neuralink, the dude's looking porn up on his head. It's going to happen. There's no not stopping it. It's the first thing I'm going to do. See, these objects are created for amazing intent, but then you forget about people, and people like to do some crazy shit. And that's when it goes. See, the weird thing is I was always afraid of Skynet when I figured out they had a giant center for existential risk, which they funded about 6-7 people to be able to study technology and make sure that there's nothing that would seem that it would overtake man. That's an actual government program in the States. So I'm like, if that's a possibility. And now the kind of fear has shifted. Now we're less working at building robots. We're more about trying to implement that technology and make a perfect human, which in my opinion is forcing evolution. I believe we'll get there naturally. I believe the kinks and all this evolution process, maybe 1,000 years, a couple 100 years down the line, will end up being fixed. Maybe people with psychic abilities, but now it's like, fuck it. I want a watch in my arm. And you're like, no.
It's going to happen. I'll tell you, like you joked, and you've obviously said about, pornography then and seeing the porn, but don't forget that, when one of the first sort of like big home entertainment leaps that was taken in the 80s with the introduction of video, VHS versus Betamax, right? Betamax was slightly more compact. It actually was better resolution, and it was it would hold more information. So it was a better version. But VHS won out. And the reason that VHS won out is because the porn industry decided to use VHS because it was cheaper. And so people were like, well, people are more willing to buy pornography. And so everybody else fell in line. So you're not wrong about people. And
I
stuff.
miss the bead curtains where you used to walk through with the. They always had beads. Why the fuck did they need beads to show up?
Adults only. The lit
Yeah,
neon sign above, and you go. I'm trying to keep this discreet, but I'm gonna have it lit
you
to
gotta.
really show that it's discreet.
That's when you wish you had like Apple Pay or something or Uber to be able to pick up a porn DVD. Because back then you had to stare the guy in the eye and give him the money, and it's just like oh, okay, you want this one? I didn't picture you for this one. It's like, don't judge me, man. Just give me my tape and let me go home in shame.
Yeah, that's yeah. Well, I always think we used to joke about it as a kid, and that thing of going into one of those shops. You see, you hang your head and show me you're buying it. He works there. That's what he tells his friends. So, swings and roundabouts, really.
That's on his LinkedIn profile. It says he works at one.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
my fear is though, like I was telling my buddy, and my buddy was telling me, he goes, "No, it's never going to get to a point where it's going to be inside of us like that." And I'm like, dude, they just put an advertisement for the Amazon where you could swipe your hand on top of the Amazon and be able to pay for things. I'm like,
It will be. Yeah.
it's going to take over because once you let the door in, then people get comfortable to that. Like I think we look back 200, 300 years. Wi-Fi, internet, not even 300 years, 100 years. This would have never been a reliant thing, but now people can't function without it. If your internet's off, you're calling somebody to try and fix it. There's no sitting around in the dark waiting for the lights to turn back on.
Right. Yeah. Put it this way, right? So what you're designing is the exponential growth of technology. And in my lifetime, right? And I was born in 1981, so I'm 40 this year, and to some
great.
I'm quite old. Oh, thank you very much. I have a very boyish complexion. But the thing is, in that 40 years, that 4 decades, which isn't that much when you think about it, right? So if you compare 1881 to 1921, right? You have the introduction of automobiles, you have cars, and there's some of the bits and pieces, like you get telephones. It's there are these slow progressions. 1981 to 2021, we've gone from a dial tone phone to the earliest computers with your sort of joystick, and you'd have really crappy graphics, through to a phone that can do anything and is a gateway. So like you said, I've got mine here, always near me. Is a gateway to pretty much all the information in the world, and has better graphics and computing power. It has better computing power than the first spaceship that landed on the moon. In this, right? And that's within my lifetime. The computer that helped Neil Armstrong land on the moon, they had 6 of them, but they were 125 megabytes apiece. And they were big.
It's going to be like Doom Patrol, where we're all going to be like a Robot Man, where it's like, I don't need my brain anymore. Just give me the robotic arms and shit.
It's interesting because you do see science fiction, and we can laugh it off, and you go, oh well, yeah, it's but then you do see that, like, there was a thing where they were sort of talking about, you mentioned prosthetics, giving a guy a leg, and you see them in the blades, the sort of the sprinters and this sort of thing. That's amazing. That's really cool. And then you see like a prosthetic arm. And at first, like, again, in my lifetime, I remember sort of the joke, or it sounds terrible, but it was used for humor. It was the prosthetic arm. It was a solid piece of plastic. That was it. Couldn't do anything. Just a fixed piece of plastic. Now they are to be able to connect up to nerves. Not full articulation, but they've got enough for you to be able to grab things and move. I mean, you can't play piano or guitar yet, but you can pick things up with a robotic arm. So if that's 40 years, all right, what's 40 years from now?
Here's a bigger one for you. We just decided with technology now, we can now grow human organs inside of a monkey.
Yeah.
So and I say that, and that's funny, that, because a lot of people I tell, they're like, no way. I'm like, look it up. Like, this is shit. Yeah. You wouldn't think we're living in this type of time, but it's so funny because I was in an MRI machine and the damn thing sounded like it was going to explode. I swear to God, I was like, not even 5 minutes in, and it was going beep, beep, beep. I'm like, oh my God. And then I just started having these scenarios in my head. Imagine if the thing exploded, or imagine if a zombie came in and bit me on the foot. My feet are out. I can't protect myself. I'm in a tube. So I'm like,
and they're tight. Those things are closed in.
God. Yeah. And they're asking you to play. What song do you want to play? I'm like, I don't know. And I said Chili Peppers like a dumbass. I've listened to them 1,000 times, and they play the same song I can't freaking stand. How long? I'm like, stop, cut it off. I'll listen to nothing but this machine planning to kill me. And I start to look at the world is getting so crazy, so vast.
Mm.
We're deciding to discover a new planet to live on. That's the basis of even going into space, because maybe we might run out of water one day. And I'm like, just get the fucking salt out of the water and we can have our 75% of our planet is water. What are you talking about? We're running out. Well, it's salt water. You think getting salt out of water is harder than going to fucking Mars?
Well, this is the thing, and I always, again, you watch, and it happens in cycles. Again, you look at this in sci-fi, and we go through these cycles of sort of utopian and dystopian futures. So you get these ideas, and we're going through a dystopian one at the moment. Like all these films and books and stuff, look at it and go, we're screwed. Our future is we are, like you say, we've got to find another planet to live on, or we end up using recycling garbage, and we're all going around in. It's like the Matrix. The skies are black, and we're all sort of lorded over by the machines. But you're right. Like we've just talked about this, the potential of augmentation, human augmentation, and that's coming. Like I've got no doubts that by the time I've got grandkids, there will be human augmentation. Like you phones in your hand or some form of communication within the human body.
Is that child abuse if my kid has robotic arms? If I can beat the shit out of him because I'm a human against a robot?
Yeah. How does that balance up? That's a what if, isn't it? That's a versus question. That is. But one of the things I'm always fascinated by is this idea of where technology goes. We mentioned about sort of VHS versus Betamax. Like, what drove that the deciding factor on that? It always comes back to these base human needs. We've got like Tesla, right? You've got Elon Musk and what's his other face? The other one, Jeff Bezos, right? So what those two, these two geniuses that go, oh yeah, I've got SpaceX. I want to send us into space. I'm going to build a rocket and I'm going to save the planet by sending us into space. Jeff Bezos is looking at like huge robotics, mass production robotics, and all these other things. And then you go, that's great. Could you put your knowledge towards energy usage? Because clearly that's where it needs to go.
Thank you.
Could you put that towards recycling? Because look at all this plastic crap that's building up on these third world countries that we're going, oh, look, we're giving you an industry, go recycle plastic, but we're going to bombard you with so much that you can't keep up. And then you've got Jeff Bezos counting, a million, 2 million, 3 million. I'm going to build a robot. Fuck your robot. Go solve an actual problem, you useless sack of crap.
I feel so comfortable right now because everybody's like, I'm so pro technology. I want auto drive cars. I'm like, you don't think at one point they're going to be able to take your car and steer it off? The guy randomly went 90 miles an hour into a wall. It's like, well, did he apply the brake at all? No, he didn't apply the brake. You think that was suicide? Really? Really?
Well, automated cars. Again, this is this thing about AI, right? So, and I am a futurist. I do look forward to a lot of these things, but there's always a case of ethics, isn't there? You've got to apply ethics to this stuff. If you want an automated car, a driverless car, these self-drive vehicles, right? And it's coming again. It's already coming. It's already happening. They're testing them out, and I think there's one in Texas, because they've obviously got massive expanses of roads out there. They've got them out there. They're testing them on these roads.
That's Elon's place.
Yeah, I think it may be something to do with Tesla and stuff. But one of the things that they're looking at is there's an ethical algorithm that they're trying to figure out. All right, driverless car, or you're driving. Let's put it this way: a human-driven vehicle comes on, and a kid runs out onto the road. Yeah.
Wait, you said me, so are you calling me a kid?
No, you're driving and a child runs out onto the road.
I'm a man.
Proper beard. Proper beard.
Mine's gone gray, so.
Oh, my wife loves it. She's like, I'm salt and pepper. And I'm getting the George Clooney. Right. That's what I like to call it. Killing myself. Anyway, if we're driving along and a child runs out onto the road, you apply the brakes. You are then running the risk of the cars behind you running into you. So then you're running the risk of those getting injured, those people and yourself. All right, so a child runs out and you swerve. All right, well, what? Do you swerve onto the pavement, in which case you're then putting other human pedestrians at risk? Or do you swerve into the other lane, in which case you're putting yourself and other drivers at risk? You as a human have to make those decisions, okay? So when you make the decisions, there is a consequence. That child should get a slap on the legs as well for being stupid enough to walk into the road. But you slam your brakes on, someone drives into the back of you, your insurance will cover that, yeah? But you are now giving, if you give a driverless vehicle, you are giving that decision-making power of life and death technically, to a car, to an algorithm, to an AI. It may, if you however you make those rules, it may actually make a calculation and go, behind me is a truck, too big, can't stop that, because even if I slam my brakes on, it's going to hit me. I'm going to take the kid out anyway. So I can't swerve onto the pavement. I can't swerve into the lane. That thing may make a decision to just plow on.
Dude, I didn't even think about that. Imagine that. The auto drive car just going right through somebody.
Yeah.
Oh
Windscreen
my
wipers.
God. I look at it, the benefit of it. Yes. Okay. If you lost an eye and you're able to get an ocular enhancement, a robotic eye, for instance, yes. But there's so many people out there, and jealousy is a fickle whore. Jealousy will get you to do some intense stuff where a person will take a pair of chopsticks and decide to rip his eye out on the fact that he's going to be able to get a fucking robotic eye. That's the issue is that there needs to be, I would say, a limiter on this. It might be good, but it's not as good as the original. So that means if you lose an eye, we can be able to restore your sight, but it's not going to be better. You're not going to be able to see through walls and shit, because that's what people think, is that it's better than the original. So why wouldn't I want an upgrade? Well, if you upgrade it, you should just do it because someone lost something and you're returning it. And if anything, you should underpower it, not overclock it.
But this is where the ethics comes in, doesn't it? Of this kind of thing and again, you're right, because at the moment, if you were to have one of these augmentations, right? I lost an arm, right? And I've now got a prosthetic arm, a robotic arm. That arm is now twice as strong, more dexterous. I can do more with it. And in addition to that, it's got built into it. I've now got my phone built into my forearm. So I can just, it's got Siri or, Alexa built into the arm, whatever it is. Am I feeling safe walking down the road one night and someone turns up with a fucking Phillips head screwdriver and says, like, that's mine, thank you very much? Like, you will get people mugged and robbed for their prosthetics, because there will be a black market for these things, surely. If it's an upgrade, as you said, then why wouldn't there be? People get mugged for their phones all the time. People get carjacked. Why wouldn't people get mugged for their prosthetics?
What about how many incidences are going to happen where the brain can't, if something happens and a malfunction happens, and next thing you know, you went to just grab your kid by the wrist, you end up snapping his arm because you can't control the thing anymore. And it starts getting down this line of like, there's going to be with every amazing innovation, there's always something that comes with it. There's always an effect. I think a lot of people didn't understand the use of plastics, for instance. Since the use of plastics were created from 1973 to where we're at, and at least when they last checked in 2011, the fertility count has dropped by over 47%. There's effects to things that we're using that we're not paying attention to. There's probably things that we're going to find out 10 years from now that we've been doing that have been causing effect on us that we have no clue about.
You're so right. Well, you talk about sort of fertility, but also the microplastics. Like, people have had blood tests and other fluid tests and stuff in their bodies of children that were born post 2000, and they've all got microplastics in them, because it's just part of the water, because of the recycling, the degradation, and all this other stuff. It's just part and parcel of what they are. It is now a part of them. But every time our history of technological advances is basically finding something that makes our lives better, not giving a shit about the dark side of it and racing forwards. And then 50 years later going, do you know what? That wasn't great. Automobiles, here's the combustion engine. Really? We can do all this other stuff? That's fantastic. Cars for everybody. 100 years later, we've destroyed the atmosphere, and we've discovered that how to generate mass electricity through the use of fossil fuels. Electricity for everybody. Right, yeah, we're actually destroying the environment through coal mining and gas.
Well, here's this.
Take everything.
What about those little Wi-Fi signal boosters you put into your house to boost your Wi-Fi in a certain location part of your house? They have these little things you plug into an outlet. It'll increase your signal in whatever part of your house. How long until someone can hack that and then somehow send out an EMP through that can hit a frequency like a dog whistle, some certain frequencies that are higher pitch or lower pitch, but be able to turn off the lights in your head because you have this electrical current that's running through your body right now from your brain? There's a way to tap into that level. This is what I'm saying. There was a giant pushback about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. I remember talking to a guy who was installing those 4G or 5G cell phone towers, and he was talking about there's nothing fucking wrong with them. And I'm like, man, there's a lot of people talking about, like, there's a house right down the street from me. It's right next to this part of this power line. And all you hear is this power line go bzzz,
Yeah.
24/7. I'm like, that's something that's leaking, or that's something that's open, and that frequency can fuck with somebody. I mean, I'm just saying there's some people out there that are very sensitive to it.
I agree that this is the thing, is everything's got to be taken in balance. Everything's got to be taken in, you've got to weigh things up. And I don't buy into the 5G conspiracies, sort of 5G created COVID, all this other shit. It's not, I don't believe that for a second. However, I do believe bats. Oh, I do believe it came from, there was something, COVID's an absolute fucking disaster, but COVID's another good example of these sci-fi tropes that are now taking place in our life. This is something we were not ready for as a human race. You made a really good point at the beginning when you say about people. Technology is fantastic. Technology is great. Technology works. It's people that don't, because we have a real problem of doing stupid things.
I also don't like the whole tracking thing with the government, for instance, and people don't really understand this, but this hit me really hard. Not only the stuff I've been researching into, but also I hadn't been to the doctor in probably 10 years. And this was it's about a year and a half ago. And I remember I going in there, like, when's the last time you went to the doctors? I was like, why? They're like, because we don't have any information, your address, we don't have any phone numbers, we don't even have like fingerprints, we don't have blood tests for this stuff, we don't have a bunch of things. And I'm like, I don't know, probably 10, 15 years. She's like, you haven't been here since 2005. And I'm like, okay. She goes, we need to get all this back up. So I had to sit there for an hour and do all these testing and all this stuff. And like halfway through it, I'm like, now you're getting me into your fucking system. Like, I was not fully tied up into your system, and now you have a track of me of where I'm at. Every time I walk in, it's like, you're here for your appointment. Don't even need to see my IDs or my cards or anything. They already know who I am and got a picture of me, everything that's scanned. And I'm like, man, this isn't going to be good, man. China has a social credit system where they can snitch on their neighbor for doing something bad, and that boosts up their credit.
This is the thing about big data. This is another sort of technological thing, isn't it? Big data. And again, it's one of these things that you sort of go, it's a great idea. And it's one of those weird things that you go, well, if you've got nothing to hide, then why are you worried? But you're still like, well, you've still got this data on me. And I find it hilarious because we all welcome technology into our homes. I'm assuming, do you have an Alexa or a Siri or anything like that?
I'm 100% as close to Amish as I can possibly get.
Okay, right. Well, I'm not. Because I am pro tech. I love it. I am a bit weird, but I am very aware of it. I'm quite. I try to make sure I'm up to date. I know for a fact, and in fact, I could probably do it. If anyone's listening, do this as an experiment. Choose a topic. Just pretend you're going to buy a car, or pretend you're looking to buy a house. Okay, if you've got an Alexa around or Siri around or any of those devices, just start mentioning things like new house or new car.
It pops up on your phone.
Exactly. All you've got to do is you've got to start, or you just keep saying new car and mentioning some car types, right? So, for example, new car, SUV, Ford Ateca, whatever you want to do, right? I guarantee that you will then go onto one of your websites and one of those sidebar adverts will be for a car company. Okay. Without a doubt.
Here's an example for you. I Googled on my computer. I just Googled something like a present for somebody. I was Googling something like some woodworking thing. I thought it would be interesting for them to have this in their house. And then I got an advertisement on my phone an hour later for it. And I was like, why the fuck are you showing me these things when I didn't even search it up on my phone? I searched it up on my computer. I called when I was getting my Wi-Fi reset, I called them. I said, does my data, anything I search on my Wi-Fi happen to hit all my devices, even if it's connected to the Wi-Fi? She goes, usually when you do something in a search bar or search result thing, you could do something on your laptop. That search result goes into your Wi-Fi. So that means any device that's hooked up to your Wi-Fi sees what you're researching. I'm like, hang on a second. What happens if I'm looking up porn on my Wi-Fi? Is my mom going to get that on her fucking phone?
Well, it's not the Wi-Fi. Don't get the Wi-Fi, because the Wi-Fi is, or the internet, the broadband is literally is a channel. It's a tunnel. Let's call it a road, right? It's a big highway. It is the internet super highway. It's literally just a road of stuff that travels up and down it, right? And so let's say you are looking at, let's go with new car again. I'm looking for a new car.
Why can't we use porn as an example?
We can use porn as an example. I'm looking for a specific type of boobs, all right? 80s boobs.
80s.
And so that information is traveling back and forth. It's going back to
show me your bush.
Yes, yeah. That's right. I'm looking for the old school. I'm looking for. Anyway, but it'll travel back and forth, and what the superhighway that doesn't collect the information, the hub does. So what it's going back to, it'll be going back to a bunch of servers, whoever provides your service provider. And so you're going back to Google. So I'm in the UK, so I'm with BT. Yeah, so British Telecom provide my internet at the moment. It goes back to their service, it goes back to their hubs, and they sort of go, here's all the information that he's been searching for through his Google searches. So they've got that information. I'm then on Google and I'm typing it in my Google search history, and all that information has been sent off to Google, and the Google servers are holding it as well. I'll then go on to Amazon, and Amazon, I go, do you know what? I really got to look for it. I really want to see if big bushy bitches is on there. Right, let's see if I can find that. Then Amazon's collecting all my data, and what's happening is all that data in different places. At some point, Google maybe or Amazon will be going, I want to buy some of that data. Can I have a look at your server data? Let's have a look. Let's do the comparison. And they are doing big tech, big data. All that information there's an algorithm that's going bit of that, bit of that, bit of that. You're looking at what on YouTube? Okay, well, YouTube. Let's have a look at YouTube history, and it just builds this algorithm. It builds this picture of who you are. And it will tell you down to the T, to the extent that you hear stories of a 19-year-old girl getting adverts and advertising emails about buying a baby pram when she's only just found out she's pregnant. Because it says, we know that you are this age. We know you are this socioeconomic group. We know that you are this.
We know you're a whore, and we're gonna give you. That's terrible.
It happened. It's happened multiple times. We know you're this kind of person, so you're probably going to want to see this, and it will throw stuff at you. And companies are buying that data, and they're going to have this massive matrix of information, and they'll go, and they have an algorithm, searches through it, and goes, here's the 700 people you want. Bang, your email goes out to those people. Probably more than that, probably 15,000. It's probably going to be 50,000 pieces. What did I say? There was one the other day I was reading about. It was a database.
The shit out of me. I hope you know that.
Oh well, this is how it all works. There was a database, and I'm trying to think of what it was.
I love it. Financials. This is how it all works. I'm like, doesn't stop me from being scared. I already want to burn everything in my house.
But this is the thing. Like, and people, what makes me laugh is when you go to things. So you see these people that say, "I'm not having the vaccine because I don't want a chip put in my arm because I don't want the government to trace me," and they're videoing someone on their phone, and I'm like, that thing you're doing, and then posting it to Twitter and every other social media platform is just tracking you. Because what that's telling you is your phone's going, here's a GPS, so I know when that video was taken. I know where that video was taken. I know whose phone it was taken on. Here's all the information I have about that. And then you posted that on social media 10 minutes later. I know that. I know where you were when you posted that. I know, all this other stuff. Do you think they aren't tracking?
I know they are, but it's like, this is the thing. I was listening to a podcast I've talked about many times, but I won't go into it. But there's a podcast. They started talking all about China. It was 1640 of Joe Rogan with Josh Rogan was on there. He's a political analyst. He was exposing so much about China, how like Clubhouse was legal for 6 weeks in China, and then they found out Chinese people were talking to people from other regions, and they ended up banning it. But here's the thing: is that China's not the issue. The Chinese government is what's the issue, is what's seen as like wrong in a lot of the ways we think of things, is because they released an app. Like, these people did not have cell phones, didn't have landlines, didn't have anything in their home. They weren't allowed to have them. Then suddenly they just randomly got cell phones. So they skipped the whole fucking climb to having cell phones. They skipped it all and just randomly got iPhones, but they had an app installed onto their phone. The app was a casino gambling app. So after they put their credit card information in there, they noticed that, oh shit, we got free money on here. I can start playing the game and I can win actual money. As soon as they got into debt, the Chinese gang, the triads, came there to collect. You know what that means? Is that the Chinese gang is working with the Chinese government. It's all fucking like, what, they got you by the fucking balls, man. I don't know what to do. I'm losing my shit, because my fear right now is, you know who Anthony Cumio is?
No.
His show was called the Opie and Anthony Show. You've probably heard of that name before.
I think I've heard that, yeah.
He had probably a radio show that was probably the very first podcast. Like, it was the insane shit. They used to have this segment where they used to have a bunch of girls just wrestling in random food that was just laying around the office. And it was like,
I do remember that.
It's like funny shit. And what happened was he got a bill when he first started doing his show from the internet company, and it was like 20 something $1,000 for like a month. He was like, what the hell? He goes, did you think this, like, you were all this airtime, all this shit you got set up as using so much internet? He goes, oh my God, I didn't even realize that. And they ended up giving him a pass on it. But now he realized how much he was using, how much it was going to charge with bandwidth. Eventually, just like how Zoom updated to say meeting is now recording and I can't fucking change it, they're going to eventually make it to the point where even a recording thing, it's going to use a separate part of your data where now you're going to have to start paying more fees and more fees and more fees,
Oh
because
yeah.
now podcasts, all these things are becoming so big. They're starting to realize how much it's taking off now, where now they want to add another fee in there, another thing that they never even thought of adding in there. And it's going to have some pushback with a lot of people. Hopefully people are going to boycott it enough to where it gets kind of put out.
Well, you say that, and it may happen. I think the thing is with technology, and I think, you know, sometimes the thing with the internet and things like podcasts and things, it's a bit like the genie's out of the bottle at the moment, because to try and bottle the internet again is impossible. Like, it just exists. And so there was a thing recently, it was about, obviously, yeah, it was about exactly what you're saying, was this idea of like, you know, we are going to cap the internet speed for certain websites and all this other stuff, and then if they want to go upgrade, then they've got to pay more, which means they've then got to charge customers more, and so, you know, or you get more advertisements and all this other stuff. But the big websites can afford it, so they'll pay for it. Like, so Amazon will just blast right through. I forget what it was called now, but basically it got put back down. It got shot down because they were like, "This isn't. It's just ridiculous. Like, it can't happen. This isn't going to work." But it was only in America, and a lot of Europe, unfortunately, we've left because, you know, stupidity. But we've left. But Europe was like, "No, that's wrong. Like, you can't do that. Like, the internet is actually a communication tool, and it exists for these purposes. It cannot be monitored in that way." So it depends on how your government wishes to monitor it. But I don't think the internet can be put back in the bottle. Podcast is a really good example. You and I are doing this, right? It's a Monday afternoon for me. It's a Monday afternoon. It's a Monday afternoon for me. Monday morning for you. And we're recording this. This will get edited and will get put out onto a number of platforms. There is no way that, and those platforms are international. Okay, so it could be Apple, it could be Spotify or Podbean or whatever, or Stitcher.
Give all those plugs. Come on now.
Money. I know, you know, I know which way my butter's bread. But all those things are going out there. They're international. Like, they are, you know, and it's a bit like, it makes me laugh when I see these things, and it happens all over the world, where they're like, "Oh, I want to curb social media. I want to curb, you know, this information going out." But they're not government led anymore. They are tech led. They are independent companies led,
privately owned. Yeah, censorship.
Yeah, exactly. So you can't censor them anymore, because it's like, well, all right, I might have my head office in America. All right, you're going to censor me. All right, well, I'm moving my head office to Germany then, because that's, you know, they are not going to censor me, and actually I can then produce it. Like, you know, that's where the servers may be in America, but then I can move all the information to another one. It's not hard. It's not a physical thing anymore. You haven't got to put those servers on a boat and drive them to Germany anymore. That wouldn't be, it'd be, yeah, I'll just send the information. They will then sit in those servers. We'll copy it across, and I'll shut these ones down, and we carry on and nobody notices. But now I'm no longer under your purview. Like, that doesn't matter. So I think there's a realization coming that, do you know what? We don't have that level of control anymore. And I think it's sort of dawned on people a little bit recently with, you know, with what's happened with Trump becoming president, and this idea of cancel culture and the left versus the right and all this other stuff. And nobody really likes that. Oh, you got to cancel that person. Stop that person. No, stop that person. They don't stop any of them, because, perfectly honest, it's an open platform. All right, I don't want hate speech. I don't want, you know, death threats and that sort of thing. There's a certain limit, but that's not just a limit to one side or the other. That's a limit across the board. And that's just social decorum. That's just part of the social contract. But that ability to have access to all this other stuff, it's open source now, really, you know. And I think that's what scares governments more than anything, is they would like to charge us for things, but we are moving towards an open source economy. A gig economy is another thing. Like, you know, the dream of all this is to be paid to do a podcast, isn't it? You know, I've got friends that really are pushing this, and you see guys on YouTube or podcasts that really do make it. And so they quit the 9 to 5. And all of a sudden you see these companies going like, oh shit, we've got to adapt. We've got to try and make this more flexible. I mean, you know, there's a thing that I've seen at the moment. We're getting surveys through where I work, and actually through my daughter's school. And there's a term called COVID keeps, where the companies are going, what are we actually, COVID's made us adapt. It's forced us down this entry. What are we going to keep from doing that? We're going to look back and do this retrospective and say, this was shit. You know, we didn't want to do, this was horrible. Don't want to do that again. But you know what? These things were good. They're actually, flexible working, remote working. I'm now set up at my home office. It works brilliant. My company, there was a worry that they were going to say, bring everything back. We want our monitors and our laptops and everything, bring them back into the office. They're like, no. Works well for us because it reduces our office space, which means our rent goes down. We actually can then claim it as part of our carbon reduction. So that's good. So they're all for it. And there's other things as well. And I do think that this thing is going to keep going, that technology is going to drive this open source gig economy. And any company that, or even government that keeps looking backwards is just going to really suffer for it.
It's scary because I remember when Google was being banned in Australia and I had to research into this. I was like, what's going on with Google? And it turned out it's all paid partnerships and stuff. I'm not a fan when it was during our elections that when the Biden laptop thing was coming out, you couldn't see anything bad about Biden. Nothing was going on about Biden. You find out that the owner of Twitter is a Biden supporter. So he was just blocking all the results. And I'm like, I get it. It's a privately owned business, but we somehow have thought that it's way bigger than that. And honestly, it is way bigger than that. Nobody predicted that it would get this big and get so enticing to us, which I'm like, my main thing is I post and ghost. I put up a post and I just don't go on social media for the rest of the day. If I get a message, it might sound like I come off as an asshole, but it's really because I don't want to sit there and message and have conversations back and forth. I'm more than happy to talk to me. Like if you have something going on, let's talk. But being on it 24/7, you can't do it because when I was doing this around episode 400, 300, I was refreshing the follower count. I was doing all that shit. And I was like, this is a very bad road to go down. And you got to cut it off when that stuff starts to happen because it will consume your life. It'll never end. Even with a tweet, I watched a teacher or they call themselves education professor. So like a bunch of like major degrees that are like, that's some laudable shit. But they put up a tweet retweeting a political person saying, you don't know a think. Like you don't know a thing, but they used think. And I just commented, you mean thing? And as soon as I commented, I deleted it a second later because I was like, no, because this is going to start a fucking Twitter war. That's going to be like a nonstop refreshing is this person talking shit on me? Is this person talking? And I don't have the time to do so. It's not worth the fucking hassle just for a correction. I just thought it was funny that they were an educator and they were fucking wrong. They did that. But there's no point to it all when you really look at the grand scheme of things. This world is being so consumed with technology. When Twitter went down last year, people were losing their shit. When I can't edit I don't really edit my shows, but when I put it into a video thing to put my intro in it, that's it. The whole thing was server down for 5 hours. And I'm like, well, I got to get an episode out. So I kept refreshing. And then eventually I was like, I don't have any control over what the fuck, when is it going to come back on? I just got to go. Even with World of Warcraft or RuneScape, whatever the fuck you're playing, servers are down, server maintenance. You got nothing you can do about it. You can sit there and bitch about it, put it on Reddit, but there's nothing in your control. You realize you are now into a system that has you like an addict, funneling back for more. And that's fucking nuts to me.
It is, and that's the thing. I think you're right about this. There's a level of addiction, and I agree that has to be managed. Now, this is when it's funny you say about education. One of the things I'm massively keen on is education. I think that when I was at school, even my daughter, she's 8, and schooling hasn't changed that much in Britain in 30 years. They go, okay, you want English and you want maths and you want science, and here's all the fundamentals, and you've got to do geography and history, and you go, okay, that's fine, I get that. And I understand why you're going to teach them about the Romans, and you sort of like, you've got to teach them this sort of bedrock of stuff, of sort of to entice them into higher education. But then I've got friends that are teachers, and they do sort of like secondary school, which is your high school and university professors and stuff I know. And they are so like, no, this is the fixed criteria. We do this as the curriculum. We teach kids these things because that's what the test is on. And if they pass the test, we say, well done, you've passed the test. You are educated and go out into the world. And you go, well, what have you taught them? You go, and a teacher friend of mine is very keen on this. He says, well, we have to teach them these things. All right. So if I use, I don't know, just to say science, for example, as an example, we have to teach them these certain things within chemistry, biology, physics. Yeah. That's what's going to be in the test. But what I want to show them is that actually they can research and do these things themselves, and hopefully they will then use that information to go out and learn more. Like, But I don't think that's almost like an old school way of thinking. You know, the government, you talk about tracking, the government wants to track the success of schools and the education system. The only way to do that is to have a fixed thing, these fixed tests. You know, it's the same, it's data points. All this is data points. Goes into big data. Look at the education. Look how many A's we're getting. Look how many B's we're getting as a nation. Oh, they've dropped off this year. Why is that? Well, teachers are shit this year. Well, it's the same teachers as last year, and they all got A's last year. What has changed? And they want to keep doing this. But one of the things I'm concerned about is this technology is on this exponential growth of technology. As I've said, in my lifetime, I've gone from a rotary phone through to a smartphone. I've gone from a ZX Spectrum through to a PS4. This technology is going to go through the roof in the next 40 years. Is we're not teaching people how to manage information. We're giving people information, so you go, here's history, here's English, we're going to teach you about Shakespeare, we're going to teach you about this. But no one's been given this sort of the ability or the skills of critical thinking and researching, and it drives me absolutely fucking wild when I see people on the internet going, I've done my own research. And you go, you haven't. You've seen something on Facebook or you've watched a YouTube video. You haven't done your own research, because if you'd done your own research, you'd have gone and read the medical reports. You'd have gone and read peer-reviewed articles. You'd have gone and read all these other things. And then you'd have sat back and done critical thinking. You may not agree with them, and you may come to the same conclusions as you've got now, but you've done the research. You've not gone, I've watched 4 YouTube videos and they've taught me that 5G causes cancer. No, that's not research. And this is the problem I have, is we have got ultimate information at our fingertips. I've got this phone. I could easily sort of go, do you know what? I want to know about quantum physics. I want to know about genetic engineering. I want to know about the futurist aspirations for prosthetics and robotics. I could look at all that. It's on here. I could easily do that. But it won't happen because I'm lazy. Let's be honest. I'm just the same as every other person. If I need to, I will, because I've been writing essays and doing these bits and pieces for podcasts. But that's what I think is missing. Education. We need to teach people. People need to learn how to learn and be willing to do that. And I don't think that's a massive thing that's missing right now, is we have access to infinite amounts of information and we are bombarded by infinite amounts of data every day. And we just don't know how to apply critical thinking and data management to it. So we just sort of go, this is scary, I'm terrified of this, so do you know what, I'm going to pick this club and I'm going to stick to this club and I'm going to become alt-right, I'm going to become liberal, I'm going to become this, I'm going to become that, and they stick to that. And then whatever that bubble tells them is what they want to believe, and that's what they stick to, and they're not going to come out of that because that's safe. And that's what I think we're sort of, this idea of technology and big data and all this other stuff, it's going to happen. You can't stop it. No chance. The only thing we can do is make people better.
Just a heads up, I'm not a 5G conspiracy person at all.
No,
not at all.
But I know some.
But I do look at a lot of this stuff with technology is just like if you're in a hole and you find out, like, you hit a vein or something, you're mining, and then water starts coming in. Instead of plugging it or filtering out that water, you keep fucking mining until the hole gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's the value of information that we have now, is we're asking for so much, we're getting so much, but we're not filtering it. We should be teaching social media in classes, in my opinion. There needs to be better education, because these things, we're running by an old template, and the template needs to keep evolving. I mean, just with even movies, for instance. Our movies are in commercials now. Now we're having like gay couples in commercials. They're having all these interracial things. They're going, I'm like, where the fuck? This has been going on for 20 something, 30, 40 years. It's like, why is this now becoming commercials? It's because now everything's catching up a little bit. It's like, you got to do something, and not in the shitty way the CIA did. The CIA is like, I'm blind and I work at the CIA. I'm like, I don't want you observing our security. I'm just saying, I don't think you're best fit for the job. It's about hiring the best people for the job. But people go upset. You're saying gay people shouldn't work at the CIA. I'm saying, no, if they're gay, who gives a shit if they're doing their job? You want to hire people that are fit for the fucking job, not because they're one thing. If you say, we hired him because he's a blind person. What the fuck are you talking about right now? I don't get it.
Again, it comes down to data points. My dad, the company he used to run before he retired, had this. They applied. He pushed back on it. He worked in engineering in the Midlands in Britain. And he was given, the government had a mandate of he had to have 25% hiring rate of what they called minority hirings. And so my dad pushed back, not because he was like, I don't want to. He was like, well, then you've got to go to the schools and start getting, kids in these minorities interested in engineering, because at the moment I don't have 25% worth coming through. Like, if I'm looking to hire people, I need the applicants. You can't tell me to hire 25% hiring rate for minorities if those minorities aren't coming through the engineering route. Like, it's just, you know what I mean? And, so it's this thing again of education at the root of everything again. This thing, the things catch up, but they need to really start thinking about how they frame things and they do these things. I was thinking about something else and about big data and this thing about, this idea you say about the government. When you mentioned the CIA.
You said so much where I'm like, I need a cigarette.
Yeah.
Like, I'm fucking feeling like I'm drained, but I'm interested because it's some fascinating shit a lot of people don't think about. We just kind of use our phones and not care where that information. Oh yeah, accept terms and conditions, but no one ever reads that shit.
That's a really good point as well. Those things have got millions of data points in. The moment you go accept cookies, or of course I accept these terms and conditions because I want to see boobs and bush, bang, off it goes.
I always hit no unless there's boobs and bush.
Yeah, that's a proviso. Will I get boobs? Yes, well, I'm in. But one of the things I think is interesting is again, I said about sci-fi producing these sort of dystopian and utopian futures, shows how there's this weird fear, and it keeps coming up in science fiction films, of how data and information is used to weed out, for want of a better word, the undesirables. So you've seen it in films. The films, Gattaca, even like Demolition Man, or Westworld season 3 sort of did it as well. This idea that
3 movies I've never seen.
I recommend all 3. Demolition Man in particular is a Stallone classic. Anyway, but this idea is that you have all this information that we're feeding out into the world. They're able to provide this profile. That poor 19-year-old girl that we said receives this information and says, here's some prams that or baby products you may want to be interested in because we're predicting that you're pregnant, and she's 6 weeks pregnant. That sort of thing. But the point is, what does it's who owns that data they then determine to do with it, because we've seen it happen, all right, and we keep saying that's in the past. Yeah, but think about if everyone got a profile of everybody that's interconnected, right? So there are parts of the world that are still well back, parts of the Middle East and parts of Africa and these parts of the sort of the third world that sort of probably aren't up on this curve. But everybody else that's tapped into this, they've got a profile on us. They've got a profile on you. They've got a profile on me. Probably more on me by the sound of it, because I'm accepting everything left, right, and center.
I do watch a lot of stuff on my phone.
Yeah, but here's what will happen: is if they really wanted to, they could look through, and this goes swings and roundabouts, right? Again, swings and roundabouts, how you want to use it. They could look through all those profiles and they create an algorithm, and it says, what is the predictive possibilities,
capabilities.
Yeah, what is the likelihood? What is the percentage likelihood of this person to be a violent criminal, or an abuser, or unemployable, or have mental or instability, whatever, sort of mental health issues? They could run through all these things and go, do you know what? This block of people, they're a burden to society.
Oh shit!
Let's get rid of them.
Oh, as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh, there's going to be so many deaths going on.
Oh, well, that's it. But we joke. You can joke, but you see it in films, and films predict this thing. But it's more than possible to do right now. I'm not advocating for it. In fact, the opposite, because the same thing could be. You take that same information and you go, what's the likelihood for? Where's this likelihood for high IQ, high musical talent, high artistic capabilities, all these other things? And go, do you know what? Here's all these people that we need to elevate up. They can produce great things, but they're stuck in poverty, or they go to the wrong school, or they go to, they're in the wrong neighborhood. Let's elevate these people out to make the world a better place. They could do it. They've got the information. And I honestly believe they've got the information now that could do these predictive things, but they won't. And I understand why, because once you do one, you open up the other.
Have you ever seen the AI lost tapes?
No, what's that?
So it's like they've made the recreation works of Amy Winehouse, Jimi Hendrix, and the band are Nirvana. So what they
Hmm.
did was they used all their created works, and they had an AI robot scan it all and then recreate a song, a new song, using all the works as like a template. So it actually, the Amy Winehouse one sounds like, what the fuck? So it's like, how far these people are dead, not creating new music, but now you're seeing like Amy Winehouse new album, and it's a machine created album based on the algorithm of Amy Winehouse, which
Yeah.
sounds fucking amazing. But then it goes to this, what I was talking about was, imagine like they had the hologram of Tupac at the concert. Imagine now you can have a hologram of a person that's dead, and now when they have in the contract agreement, in case something happens, they go, we can still use your likeliness. So
Yeah.
next thing you know, that person's still recreating new shit, even though they've been dead. And then what happens if that new stuff sucks? And then you ruin that person's career, their legacy, even though they died.
Well, and that's an interesting point because again, it's this thing against art and creativity versus an algorithm. This is something they have fed again data points. There'll be different data points. They'll be like, okay, this music is on these things. This is the kind of lyrics they have. This is the tone they use. Feed it all into a machine. That machine has scanned it, analyzed it, and then produces an output. And you're saying, oh yeah, it sounded great. That first one song was great. All right, who created that? Who created that song? All right. Who's, because one of the things you hear, especially the artists you've just mentioned, they are soul driven. Like, their music and their art came from a place of pain in a lot of cases. And so to then say, yeah, but I've now listened to an Amy Winehouse song that was great, not written by her or even produced by her, post mortem. She's dead now. But this song sounded great. Okay, well, it's not an Amy Winehouse song, then, is it? It's an algorithm that's produced the song, but it was still good. So how does that affect the idea of art and beauty and creativity? Like, can it just be? Is it subjective? Is it objective? I don't know. That's the thing, though, because can it just be put down to data points?
It's called We're All Probably Going to Hell. I don't know
Yeah.
why, but it's going to happen sooner than I think later. I have hopes for the world, but the way the technology goes, there just needs to be a point where people start saying this might be a little bit too much, but we all want those new innovations, man. I mean, I'm not so against it to where I wouldn't accept an Alexa, but I had a Google Home I had it in the box for a year and a half. I got it as a
Mm.
Christmas present. I never needed it. I gave it to my cousin because I'm not about that. I still like some basic functions. I mean, sometimes like when I get a new phone, it's an hour or 2 hours me trying to understand it. It's not that I'm slow with it. It's just that I don't really want to have my knowledge all based in technology. I want to have it in other various acts, I would say.
No, I agree. One of the things is I often joke about this is that I'm not a handyman. I can do basic tasks. I can rewire a plug. I can do some fixes around the house.
That's basic.
Yeah. Took me a while to get there.
Fuck. I'm about to say,
I
I know how to screw stuff in and nail stuff down.
Yeah, but there's still a part of me that looks at, I watch these, you see, again, I watch videos online, but I see people creating pieces of art or building something. They'll take a piece of wood and all of a sudden they'll build a chair. Or you'll see a guy and he's like, oh yeah, I've got a 1967 Ford Mustang and I've been maintaining it for the last 20 years. And I'm like, Jesus, that's really impressive. Like, I wouldn't know where to start. Like, I've got no idea. I have no tactile physical skill in that area. Like, my job and everything I do is very sort of it's thought skill based. I'm a project manager, so it's sort of like I can arrange things, I can facilitate meetings and all this other stuff. But if you said, like, if the apocalypse came tomorrow and there was a massive EMP pulse, that there was a solar flare, put it this way, if there was a solar flare, which has been predicted as a possibility, that emits an EMP pulse that takes out all the electronics on this planet, and we go back to the Dark Ages, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I'm picking up a club and I'm just like, right, that's it. That's what I can do. But,
It'll probably be the first time I read a book.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you can't see me over the shoulder. I love physical books, but I have a Kindle.
Got a bookcase right in there.
Yeah. But like you say,
Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
I love the physicality and the tactileness of certain things. But I'll tell you what, like I say, technology, I love technology. I love this idea of futurism, but it does scare me in the same way you said that, like, if it all goes to pot, I don't know what it means. I don't know. We just have to have trust and hope that, it will be done in the right way. You are never going to stop the bad guys using it. Never. it's just you just have to hope that there's a force there to act as a buffer between you and whatever it is. Like, think about all the crap that happens now. That, one of the things we have to do at work is I have to go on these courses to teach me about phishing emails. All right, so these emails that come in that have a virus or or malware or a worm embedded in them. Here's how to identify them. If you're getting them from someone you don't recognize, or the email looks dodgy or whatever, delete it and then report it. All this other stuff, because it's got past the firewalls. That's not a thing that I knew about. 10 years ago, that wasn't a thing. But now I'm getting I get emails to my thing. I get voicemails to my phone going, this is the HRMC, which is the Inland Revenue over here, the tax office. Oh, but you owe us money. No, I don't, because I deal with all my stuff through my account and through, I know they won't call me. But this is still people that are going, oh, it's that time of year. We know these people have had these interactions. It's tax time. So we're going to bash out a bunch of these phishing things, and someone's going to come back. It started, I'm a prince in Nigeria looking for £10,000. Now it's really sort of clever stuff, and you just got to hope that someone is acting on the good to protect you from that, to break those down and to stop what you can. But you can't stop this tidal wave of technology. I think it's just going to keep happening.
Scott, you giving me enough of your time today, man. We're definitely going to be doing more podcasts, dude. I feel that for sure. I love nobody ever wants to talk about this stuff. Everyone else is like, I can't wait to get the new Tesla. I'm like, all right, okay, that's cool. I mean, I'm a little bit against it, but where can people find you at, Scott? Both podcasts.
If they want to come find us, if they want to talk sci-fi in particular, as we sort of started with, it's at Pod Time Space on Twitter, also at 20th Century Geek. More than happy to talk about most topics on there. And also, if you want to email me directly, it's 20thcenturygeek@gmail.com. And I have a website, 20thcenturygeek.com. Find the podcasts, both 20th Century Geek and Stories Out of Time and Space, on pretty much all podcast catchers. And please go check them out. They're really good fun.
I like it. Good fun. But everything else we talked about was scary, horrible government type shit. But hey, man, this has been awesome, dude. Thanks for joining me on this episode. And thanks for listening to this episode out of the Blank Podcast.